Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where we discover the communities that are making a difference in the lives of others. Our self-discovery is something we are all making on our life's journey. Here you will find the people that will be your guidance, that will be your inspiration, that will be there for you in support on your journey of life. Do enjoy. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of your... sorry, I'm going to start that all over again. I'll delete this bit. Clearly, it's gone to my head today, honestly. All right, here we go again. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to your mental health awareness right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Dr. Joseph Trunzo. Oh my gosh, we got a show for you today. We're going to be talking about the long haul of COVID, a survivor's guide, transforming your pain and find your way forward. You know, whether you've got COVID or not, or whether you've just really kind of become saturated with the entire pandemic, there isn't anybody out there that hasn't been affected by it in some form or other. And he's written a wonderful book, which we're going to be talking about today, The Long Haul of COVID and the Survivor's Guide. And it's transforming your pain to find your way forward, because folks, we need it. We feel that we're going around in circles at the present moment. And so we need to really understand what it's all about, how we can navigate our way through it. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are actually have had COVID and they're suffering the long-term effect of it, but we're suffering the long-term effects of the pandemic even being out there. So we're going to be talking to him about all of this. I want to dive right into it. First, my apologies, folks. I do have a cold, so forgive the sniffles or the sneezes. I will try not to cough in your ear. But no, it's not COVID, and you can't get it through your computer. So welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thanks very much for having me, Sarah. I appreciate it.
You know, your specialty is mental health, and really, I really don't know anybody that isn't affected by this whole pandemic, whether it's been economic, whether it's been health, the emotional stress, to vaccine, not to vaccine. You know, it's the conversation that everybody has, even if they don't want to have it. And it's really taken a toll on us as a humanity because it's gone on for so long. And there are so many diverse feelings about it. It's a hoax. It's just a cold. It's just this. It's a government conspiracy. And then the people who have it going, no, this is all too real. How do we navigate our way through this?
Wow, you know how to start with the big questions, Sarah. I'll just check all those boxes and solve all those problems. You know, first 5-10 minutes of the show, we'll be a-okay. Look, I think it all boils down to one thing. As a human race, as people, we're suffering more so than certainly than I can recall in my lifetime. We probably have to go back to really significant periods of war, the Great Depression, so on and so forth. This is really globally transformative stuff, and really not in a good way for anyone. So I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I wear a couple different hats. I'm a university professor. I'm also a practicing psychologist. And I can tell you, in my 30 plus years in the business, I have never seen the demand for behavioral health services to be higher than they are right now. And that is a really prominent indicator of the difficulties that people are having in coping with the consequences of the pandemic. So the book specifically is about dealing with long haul COVID symptoms. So if someone got infected and then they're over their period of active infection, but they have prolonged symptoms, how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that? But the approach that we use in the book, which is called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, or ACT, is really something that can be universally applied to all forms of human suffering. It's a well-established, scientifically valid psychotherapy approach, and it's what we call transdiagnostic. So it helps people who are depressed, it helps people who are anxious, it helps people who have trauma, substance abuse. At its core, it's a system of therapy that's designed to help people manage and deal with their suffering in a much more functional and adaptive way. So whether you're suffering from specific long-haul COVID symptoms, or you're suffering from the stress of the pandemic, social isolation, all of the divisiveness that's been going on, we think that there are things in the book that can be helpful to people finding their way through all of this, and being more functional and trying to live more intentionally and meaningfully and vitally, even though things are far from perfect right now, whether you're sick or not. So that's the overall intention. The book is part of what's called the Reset Our Future series, and our intention is to kind of reset how we as a human race typically tend to deal with pain and suffering. So that's the lofty ambitions in a tiny book, but we think it's packed full of good information. So
things don't have to be big to be good.
no, they don't.
Let's go back to kind of World War II, and the countries that were bombarded with it, they were all in the same boat. They all came together. There was no end in sight, and literally their lives were on the line every day. But you didn't have such diversity as you do today because of social media, and fake news, and the real news coming out and people not believing it, and there is so much confusion out there. And I think that in many ways, the old days where we've got a common enemy. And this is what we're fighting, and we're going to come together, put aside our differences. Right now, we seem to see more division than ever. Now, at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody came together so beautifully, and everybody was out there kind of like, we're going to beat this, we're going to fight this, we're going to support those that are on the front line. And then it just suddenly became the war on. And we're fighting a battle that it's of our own making, I think, in many ways. The pandemic is the pandemic. It's the enemy. We could fight that enemy if we all just kind of pitch in and do our part. But now it's become so, I don't know, divided and stretched and hysterical. I kind of call it a tornado that is, keeps going around and people are getting caught up in it. And I feel that it's almost beyond the COVID now. And that is not healthy for us, because when we're together, we come together, we fight together, we stand together, we support each other. But when we're divided, I think the emotional stress on all of us, trying to prove our point or trying to defend something, or just weary from the bombardment every day of it. I don't know anybody who can't be worn down from this.
Yes. So I regularly prescribe to my clients to take extended news breaks.
Yes.
So I'm old enough to remember a time when the only news you got was in the morning paper. Maybe there was an evening edition, depending on where you lived. And then you had a half hour of local news at 6 o'clock and a half hour of national news at 6:30. And then that was it. You went out and
there
played
was an
baseball, and you
integrity
fixed the
to
car.
it too.
Right.
Yeah.
So while I don't want to misrepresent myself and say that I'm not a fan of people being informed. I think it's important for people to be informed. I'm also not going to say that I'm not a fan of people being connected. So like the internet and social media can be tools for amazing powers of good, but I also think that 24-hour news and constant social media and these platforms that people have to I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but to just sensationalize, spew, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Like I want people to be able to express themselves, but I don't think it's an accident that the rates of depression and anxiety have gone up pretty continually with the prolonged exposure to with the advent of cable news and social media and all those sorts of things. I think it's really important that people take downtime, that they recharge themselves, that they connect to the things that are really meaningful and important to them, that ground them. And what we're seeing is, look, I mean, we're a very diverse people. Different people have different opinions about things. The reasons for those opinions vary widely. And you're not going to find universal agreement about anything or about everything, but I would hope that we could find universal agreement on just, not wanting to hurt one another.
Right. We could hope, but
yeah, we could hope, but it's a massively complex thing. It goes beyond individual behavioral science, which is my, my specialty. The anthropological, sociological, cultural implications of all of this are just, they're going to be researching this for a long, long time, for sure.
Well, I've said that there'll be an economic pandemic because there's going to be economic fallout, and that also has an effect on people. But the post-traumatic stress, not just on the nurses and the doctors and the people on the front line, but I just think battle weary, COVID battle weary. And we're just seeing so many more people with high anxiety, with depression. And, really it is post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think, you don't have to be there was one guy that once said that you can't have post-traumatic stress if you're not on the front lines of the army. Anybody can go through post-traumatic stress. And I think we're going through it as not just as a nation, but as a worldwide thing right now. And we don't know how to deal with those feelings. The constant high anxiety. What's coming next? What rule is changing next? And can I plan something? I just had some friends. Well, we've already cancelled our holiday for next year because we don't know what it's going to be. And so everybody's living on the edge right now. And it's a hard place to live, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I do want to be careful about using the term post-traumatic stress disorder, because that is a very specific clinical diagnosis. It's different from chronic anxiety or generalized anxiety or depressive episodes. But the flavor of what you're getting across, in that people's stress levels and anxiety and burnout and depression are, seemingly higher than they've ever been.
Yeah.
There's no question that that's the case. And I think that, what breeds that is uncertainty. So,
yes.
as a human race, we prefer to have predictability. Like we like to know what's going to happen, even if what's going to happen is really bad. If we know that it's coming and we're aware of it, we can kind of steel ourselves for it, and we can prepare for it.
Brace ourselves.
You're right. It's this idea that it's not the idea; it's the reality that things can change on a dime, and that you don't know what the next set of rules are going to be, and you don't know what the next implications are. So when people have that sense of uncertainty, the natural reaction is to try to find some kind of control. So, the person who has uncertainty about whether or not they're going to be able to have their holidays, well, they just cancel the holiday. Now I have control. I know what's going to happen.
Right.
I feel better. And part of what acceptance and commitment therapy advocates for is for people to be able to be open to and sit with these uncomfortable and difficult emotions, such as uncertainty, which breeds anxiety, and then be really, kind of observant about your own emotional state, about your own thought processes. Take get a little bit of distance and take that observing stance, and then be able to say, okay, so, I can see that I'm feeling very uncertain about this. I can see that it makes me really anxious. My inclination is to make that go away because that's what makes me more comfortable. But comfort isn't necessarily the best decision-making process, right? We want to try to make our decisions about what we do, our actual behavior. We want those to be grounded in the things that are actually really meaningful and important to us. So, for the person who cancels their holiday because they need to have that sense of control or certainty, and they've done so, 3 months ahead of time, and they have that sense of comfort, okay, you have that comfort, but are you potentially sacrificing
Hmm.
quality time with family, which one would
Right.
assume is meaningful to you?
Right.
And you know, there are a lot of things that go into that calculus in terms of safety, but uh, I think, you know, in general, as human beings, if we're anxious, if we're in pain, if we feel discomfort, any of those sorts of things, our natural reaction is to avoid, escape, extinguish, or try to control those things so that we don't have to feel that way
Right.
anymore. But those kind of knee-jerk reactions are often what get us into more trouble, right? I mean, the classic example of this is someone who is a substance abuser or an
Yeah.
alcohol abuser. Like they feel anxious, they have a couple drinks. In the short term, that alcohol is going to soothe their anxiety because that's what alcohol does.
Hmm.
But in the long term,
Yeah.
that avoidance of that anxiety, rather than just being able to sit with it and move through it, the avoidance will lead to more problems. And if it's one thing I can guarantee you about human emotions, it's that they are transient, right?
Mm.
We're not geared to feel the same way all the time.
Right.
You know, anybody who tracks their emotions over the course of the day, it's going to go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's the nature of the beast. So if we allow ourselves and give ourselves the room to move through our own emotional experiences and kind of, drop the rope in the tug of war of trying to control our emotional experience, it actually frees us up to be able to be more engaged with our lives and the things that are meaningful to us. And, that's ultimately how I think we're going to be able to get through all of this.
You know, we've had here in British Columbia, the opioid crisis has gone through the roof.
Of course. Yeah.
And we're seeing more domestic abuse. You know, we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing more suicides. We're seeing more of that because, you know, people just like, I don't know where to go. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go to the easy way out, which, you know, it is. Um, and that's just purely because people don't have the navigational skills, you know, to deal
Yep.
with it. And then on the other hand of the things, you can't see a doctor. You can't see anyone because
Mm-hmm.
it's over the phone or over Zoom and you can't see anyone in person. And so, you know, it isolates people even more. And those that are really in need of trouble, you know, or that are in trouble, that are really in need of help, it's like, but I don't know where to go. I don't know what to
Mm-hmm.
do. I don't know how to even express how I feel. I just know I feel trapped. And this, I think, is a problem. Is kind of a spiral problem because I've had a mandate lately of doctors. You've got to get back into the surgery
Mm-hmm.
and not doing everything by the Zoom call because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just physically have to be there for someone. And I don't know. It's kind of a spiral type thing, isn't it? Is that there's this is the solution, but you can't get that solution, and so everybody looks for another solution, but that solution creates another problem.
Right. So, it's interesting. Obviously, the different areas of healthcare translate uh, more easily over Zoom or teleconference or whatever. So, in my line of work, psychotherapy, uh, the transition actually worked fairly
Right.
well. Right. I don't do physical exams for people, so being
Exactly.
able to have conversations, it got people through, and it worked, I would say, well enough. And but now that, with vaccinations and changes in regulations, what I found is that the second I was able to start seeing people physically back in the office again, the vast majority of people chose to come back into the
Yeah.
office because there is a power about um,
Hmm.
sitting in the same room with someone and sitting with their pain, literally and figuratively, that you just can't necessarily
Yeah.
get over the video communication. But I would argue that, at least for behavioral health purposes, the video communication, it has been an absolute godsend,
Yeah.
and like I said, has really helped to hold things together. The bigger problem isn't so much the telemedicine; it's finding a provider who is not completely booked and totally overwhelmed.
Right.
So, I don't mind doing teletherapy with someone, but I just, like, the wait list in my practice is over 100 people deep. So that's the real problem, is that there simply are not enough
No.
providers to provide the services that are needed. This is one of the primary reasons that we wrote the book, because we realize people are not, you're just, it's not that it's impossible. It depends on where you are, but it is going to be really, really challenging to get connected with a quality behavioral health professional to guide you through the kinds of things that I would do with someone. And that's essentially what the book does.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously reading a book is not going to cure everyone's ills, but, if anybody reads this and gets a nugget or two that helps them through until they're able to get connected with more regular help, then we did our jobs.
Sometimes it's not always the answer, it's asking the right question. Right. And, like having a book that kind of helps you through this, it helps you ask yourself the right question. Is this me? And do I have that strength and courage within me to navigate through this? When, the book gives the people kind of an insight into themselves, a reflection, right? And this is what we need, because I think one of the problems with the high anxiety is that we do feel now even more disconnected than before, and we don't know who to turn to. And even talking to your friends, and you said, get to see a doctor of any level right now is impossible. You can't really talk about it with your friends because they're going through it too. And it ends up being a bitch fest rather than a solutional support, right? So sometimes you have to step outside of your circle and go somewhere else, and reading something coming from someone like you, there where you're sharing the nuggets and the tidbits, it's something that you could do as a family, and each person is going to go, well, that really resonates with me, or why does that resonate with you? And it's permission to speak to one another about the pain you're in, because we're all in it, and so we think we need to suck it up. And while we're sucking it up, it's breaking us down. So we need to actually talk about it, but we need to know how to talk about, how to ask the right questions, how to listen and look for the answers together.
So I really like the idea of people read this book, any book, as a family, and kind of being communal about it and being reflective about it. I think that can be really, really powerful and really helpful. And your comment about asking the right question is so on the mark, because so often people come into, they come into my office. I see a lot of, I specialize in anxiety disorders. So a lot of people have anxiety. And a lot of times they come in and the question they're asking is, how can I not feel this way anymore?
Right.
And that's the wrong question, right? The wrong question is, how can you build enough strength and resilience so that you can feel this way and still live your life and still do the things that you need to do in a meaningful way without this getting on top of you and crippling you.
Right.
People, it's not the job of a good therapist to help people not to feel things.
Right.
It's the job of a good therapist to help people to be able to feel things and still function and live a meaningful life.
I would say 95% of the people I interview are people that have had some form of various level of trauma. Some of them have just been like beyond any human being should go through, but they chose to go through the process. They chose to find their strength and courage. They chose to look at what abilities they did have. They chose to step into purpose. And in that purpose now, they can talk about what happened to them without feeling the pain or the anxiety around it. And they've become a beacon of light for other people on how to get through that pain and that suffering. So there is no numbing it. There is no disguising it. There is no ignoring it. We've really just got to learn the skills, how to go through it, and finding a meaningful purpose of service in some way really is a wonderful way of kind of getting through it, isn't it?
So yeah, look, you're hitting on the fundamental tenets of acceptance and commitment therapy. So, a couple of things. When it comes to whether it's anxiety or depression or pain or trauma, whatever, what I almost always tell my clients is, there's no way over, there's no way around, there's no way under, there is only through. And the way to carry yourself through is to open yourself up to allow yourself to have that experience, which I acknowledge can be a tough
Yeah.
sell, right?
Yes,
So that
yes.
whole idea of
I don't want to
acceptance,
feel it.
right?
Yeah.
Whole idea of acceptance, it's a tough nut to crack. But once someone does, once they
Yeah.
get it, it's really, really powerful and transformative. And the way that I usually uh, have success in helping people to be in that space is to identify, you called it their sense of purpose, and
Mhm.
ACT, we call it values,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So what are the things that are, absolutely fundamentally meaningful to you? And then you highlight the fact that whatever those things are, they carry with it pain.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people that I see have kids, right? So I'm like, so inevitably one of their values is like, I want to be the best
Yeah.
parent that I can possibly be. And I say, okay, great. That's a really good value, well articulated. So, has being a parent been pain free for you? Right? And we always get that chuckle because of course it
Yo,
has, right?
I've had three, and there's a 6-month-old grandson down the road, and
Exactly.
they no sleep and teething and everything else. Yeah, no, it's not pain
So
free.
the whole idea is, okay, let's say your kid misbehaves, and it's time to implement some sort of punishment, to implement some sort of discipline. And as a parent, particularly when they're so cute, like they're
Yeah,
5 or 6 years old or
yes,
whatever, and or even when they're older and it's going to be a big conflict, it is
right.
excruciatingly painful
Oh yeah,
to be that parent. But you do it because it's connected to the value
yeah,
of raising a functional human being who is going to be a positive contributor to society. And many, many very clear examples of people who have avoided the pain of conflict with their children
hmm,
and who don't implement that discipline, who don't teach their kids right from wrong. And those are the children that grow up to be entitled or narcissistic or
hmm,
whatever. So this idea of anchoring uh, your behavior in your values, and then using that to make the pain and the difficulty that you're experiencing just a little bit lighter, right? Nothing that has ever really been meaningful to someone has been pain free.
no,
There's something about everything that's meaningful that is painful, and parenting is just one example. But if you're experiencing that pain in service of something that is meaningful to you, then you can carry that pain a little bit more lightly. If you're just experiencing pain chasing your tail, or you're
hmm,
experiencing pain as a function of trying to avoid something, that's what suffering actually is.
right. Yeah,
And that's
repeating the same
that's
old thing.
right, and
Mhm.
that's where people get stuck. And that's where acceptance and commitment therapy, and the what we describe in the book, is designed specifically to help people to break that cycle and to move forward.
I kind of refer to it as like, when you're having a baby, you've got 9 months of discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
There's the child growing inside of you, and backache and this ache and that ache, and then you've got the excruciating pain of giving birth.
Yep.
And then they put that child in your arms, and all of that is forgotten. All of that is forgotten. The
Mm-hmm.
euphoria of that child in your arm, and then steps in, oh, I'm responsible for this child now for
Mm-hmm.
the rest of your life. And then, it's a
Flooded with
different,
fear and anxiety
yeah,
and worry.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you go through that, but it is all worth it. And I say to so many people who are going through this transition, this process, you are giving birth to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can decide what you're going to be when you've birthed yourself. That take all the things that that don't serve you and find a way of letting them go. Look at the strength and the courage that is actually within you, and all the abilities that you never knew you had, and
Mm-hmm.
feed those, nourish those. And you're going to, everybody who's done that and gone through that process is, I wouldn't change a thing. Who I am today, I like who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have become this person had I not been willing to go through all of those challenges.
Yeah. So exactly. And you know we have to acknowledge that uh, uh, you know tied to the uncertainty that I spoke about before, control is a big factor here.
Yeah.
And um, I'm sure what a lot of people are thinking is, okay, so like, for example, your childbirth example, totally legitimate, but somewhere in your mind, you're thinking, well, I'm going to get through this and this is going to be over, right?
Right.
And when there's a definitive endpoint,
Mm-hmm.
a little easier to carry yourself through. But I think what we're finding that's really exacerbating the anxiety and the depression around all of this is there's
Yeah.
no definable
No.
endpoint, right?
No end
So
in
if you
sight. Yeah.
if you have long-term symptoms from a COVID infection,
Yeah.
you don't know when or
Right.
even if those are going to go away. We don't know when the pandemic is going to subside. We don't know when things are going to be back to normal. We don't even know what normal is anymore.
No. No.
So uh, it's important to recognize that even when there's no definitive end in sight, and even when we feel like we have a complete and utter lack of control over all of the things that are going on out there, which is very much where most of us are right now. We're not policymakers. We don't determine the CDC rules or any of those sorts of things. Um, it doesn't mean that you can't make decisions about your behavior in
Yeah.
the moment that is serving your values and that is functional for your day-to-day existence. Even if everything out there
Yeah.
is madness, you still have control over the choices that you make around your behavior. And if you want to be very, very dichotomous about it, you are either doing things that are moving you towards what you value and what's meaningful to you, or you're not.
Right.
And if you're not, then you're leaning more towards the suffering
Right.
side. If you are, even though some of those things might be really difficult and really uncomfortable and really painful and really uncertain, you're going to be moving your life along in a good direction, regardless of all the madness that's going on around there. And I think if everybody did that,
Mm.
right, maybe a lot of the madness would
Subside.
dissipate and go
Yeah.
away.
And, we can't choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we react to it and what we're going to do about it. And even in abstaining from a choice is a choice,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can choose to stay in the suffering and the turmoil,
Mm-hmm.
or you could choose, I'm just not going to live like this anymore. There's
Mm-hmm.
got to be a solution. I don't know where the end is in sight, but
Right.
I do know that I can survive this and maybe even thrive this. If I can find my values or my purpose within the tornado,
Mm-hmm.
within this hurricane that's going on right now. We look at all the disasters in the world or war-torn countries. Since the beginning of time, we destroy things, but what do? We rebuild, and we generally rebuild better. And we come together in that rebuilding, and we rebuild communities. But, right now we're still in the battle,
Mm-hmm.
and we just don't know when it's going to be over, but we can still prepare for tomorrow. We can still start gathering all the skills and the tools that we need for that new norm, because we're not going back to an old norm, we're going to a new norm. And it can be based in those values, in that meaningful purpose. We could start setting that ground, painting that canvas.
And it's and so I agree with you, and you can scale it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So there are a lot of people who are really, really physically or emotionally debilitated. Like people who may not even be able to get out of bed. So they
right.
might be listening to this and they might be thinking, well, what the hell am I going to do? I can't even get out of bed. Like I can't go to my kid's baseball game. I'm like, okay, so those are things that you might not physically be able to do. What is the value that's connected with those things? Well, I want to be present for my kid. I want to spend time with my kid. Okay. So if you can't go to the game, what can you do?
Mm-hmm.
When your child gets home, can you listen to
Mm-hmm.
them tell you about the game?
Right.
Can somebody film the game for you and then you
Mm-hmm.
can watch it with them afterward? So
Yes.
it's if
Being
you're if
present
you're
with them.
if you're connected to the
Yeah.
value, you can always find a behavior, even if it's way smaller than what you would want it to
Right.
be. It's better than not engaging with it at all.
Do you
So it's
find that
about
if we're looking to serve others, that very often it serves ourselves?
so look, I'm a believer in that, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I think that really depends on the individual and what the individual's values are.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a value for that person to serve others, then I believe that there will be, that there will be a return on that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not everybody places as high a value on that, and that's okay. You don't, not everybody has to be, has to be Mother Teresa, but it's about really connecting with what you value and what's meaningful to you in all the different domains in your life: work, leisure, family, spirituality, all of those sorts of things. And then making sure that every little behavior that you're doing and every big behavior that you're doing is moving you in that direction.
You said in the beginning about turn off the news.
Mm-hmm.
With the time that you were talking about, and I don't know if you've ever seen the Netflix series, The Newsroom. And
I have.
it's brilliant. You will love it. I really do think you will love it. But it's kind of around, the news with the integrity and the truth that it was, as opposed to the sponsors coming in and manipulating it, which is what we've got now, is manipulation. We don't even know what's true anymore because of all of that. So if we're confused by it, switch it off. If we are around people that are being negative and pull you down, don't mix with them.
Mm-hmm.
If there is something that that lifts you up, the dog's playing with a ball or a stick, the
Yeah.
kids coloring you a picture,
Mm-hmm.
Even cleaning your kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
do something that's going to uplift you, that's going to make you feel good, and feed what the solution is, and not constantly feed what the problem is.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. So it gets tricky because a lot of what I preach is, like non-avoidance, right? So in
Mm-hmm.
ACT, we call it experiential avoidance. People are trying to, sort of like run away from their feelings and all of those sorts of things. So people misinterpret that and they say, all right, the example that you use, like you're in the company of someone who's really distressing to
Mm-hmm.
you, and people say, well, I'm supposed to be open and accept this, and I'm like, that that's for things that are uncontrollable, right?
Yeah.
If there's a situation that you can
Mm-hmm.
fix it,
Yes.
right? So if you're around a person who's really toxic and you can get away from that person,
Mm-hmm.
get away from that person, because ACT is all for simple solutions if the simple solution exists. But pain and suffering and human emotions and the human condition are rarely the result of simple solutions.
Yeah.
So it tends to be more complicated than that. So you have to be really observant and attuned to the mix of what can I fix, what can I fix, and then the things that I can't fix, how I work around them and continue to move my life forward, even though it's not an ideal circumstance for
Right.
me.
I mean, I know that I can be a person of high anxiety. As a kind of an empath, I feel other people's feelings,
Yeah.
and I can take it on, and I go, this is not me. I can't take it. It's saturating me. It's pulling me down, and I have to isolate myself. I'm not going to help them. I'm not going to help anybody in that situation. So I think, one of the things we kind of owe ourselves is, what kind of type of person are we? Are we a person
Mm-hmm.
who that is going to get caught up in the suffering out there? You have to choose your battles. You can't save everyone. So choose something that you can fight for, that you can make a difference for, and not like, but I want to fix everybody, because then it becomes something that is just going to let you down and put you more into a depression. So,
Mm-hmm.
like choosing the news, I think we also have to choose what our direction is going to be and what we're going to feed and nourish, even, ourselves first, right? We can't help anyone else until we help ourselves.
I think anytime you define aspects of the human condition as a problem to be fixed,
Mm-hmm.
you're starting off from the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, being a human being is being an experience.
Yes.
It is perennially an imperfect experience.
Mm-hmm.
So embracing that imperfection and allowing yourself to move through and navigate that is going to lead to a much more functional outcome.
Yeah. It's, one of the words I absolutely hate is comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And I think again with social media,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at comparison. Well, so and so had COVID and she's all right. What's wrong with you? Why can't you
Right.
just snap it off? And it's like, well, why are you so stressed about it? And it's like, stop comparing. Yourself, how you feel and what you need to do for yourself. If you don't, you need to read the book or reach out to have somebody help you know yourself and know what to do for you. But please don't compare. And of course, social media has its great points, but one of its weak points is comparison. And the moment you start comparing or competing, you are losing yourself.
Absolutely. There are places where comparison makes sense. It's maybe in a track meet,
Yes.
right? Where somebody's going to be first, somebody's going to be second,
Yeah.
somebody's going to be third. But in general, in life, you need to. The only comparison you should be making is like, am I trying to do better myself every day? That's it.
Compared to who I was yesterday, have I moved an inch forward?
Right.
And I think it's also don't look for the yard forward. This isn't a competition. It's not a race. If all you can do is an inch forward today, that's okay. If there's a day where you're just standing still and you can't move forward, that's okay, as long as you're not moving backwards, right?
I often tell people that taking a nap can be a value-driven exercise.
Yeah.
So sometimes, sometimes we just, we need a break.
Yes.
And if you might have gone, you might have moved a yard yesterday, so you can, and if you're cooked from that, you can take the day and say, you know what, I'm okay with just recharging my batteries and maybe don't go anywhere today. And that there's value in that, and just consciously giving yourself a break so that you're in a better position to move forward later on.
I think the magic word no too, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Not people, I don't want to offend someone, or I don't want to look this or do like, no. If you can't, if you know that it's against your well-beingness, it's okay to say no.
It's necessary.
It's necessary. Yeah. We don't know where the COVID is. I've known quite a few people, including my daughter, who had COVID. Blessing with her, it was a light case. There's still some residual with the lungs, but I'm fortunate with her. I did have a young woman on who had COVID right at the beginning, and she's a lawyer, and she was about to go and do a big case, and she got COVID, ended up with the fog brain. And she said it's still not back. She still, constantly feels that she's through a haze. And of course, this is kind of almost a new thing that people really don't know what to do with, right? It's something to do with the frontal lobe, and you don't know how long it's going to last, not quite sure what to do with it. And so many people have got some residuals from actually having the COVID that is absolutely real, but they're kind of in the dark as what to do with it. Have you found that with any of your patients, that it's a new arena?
So what I would say is it's actually not new. So it's new because it's COVID.
Right.
But if you look at most of the symptoms of long haul COVID, so whether it's brain fog or chronic lung issues, chronic fatigue, they actually mimic the chronic illnesses of a lot of other diseases. So there's a lot of overlap with, say, Lyme disease or multiple sclerosis, or people who have gotten what they call chemo brain from extended chemotherapy. So these problems have been around for a very long time. The fact that they're coming from COVID is new. And it's one of the reasons why we decided to write the book, because there are already existing treatment approaches, because, cancer's been around for a very long time. Lyme disease has been around for a very long time. And, chronic illnesses of all sorts have been around for a very long time. So acceptance and commitment therapy is a form and an approach that's been that's got some scientific evidence behind helping people with those kinds of symptoms and those chronic illnesses, along with, like cognitive behavioral therapy. So really the book is saying, look, we have these things in place that help people with similar problems that came from a different place, but these things can help you. So, yes, we still need to do the research. Yes, we still need to do the clinical trials and the protocols, but people are hurting right now. And, all the book really is saying, like, look, these things have helped people who've had similar symptoms from different things before. We think that they can help you now. So that's, I'm not going to call it a blessing, but that's it's good that we already have some kind of
Yes.
foundation around dealing with those sorts of symptoms.
Because a lot of people will look at it and go, oh, this is purely a COVID thing. No, it's COVID ignited. But
Right.
the problem has always been there, and you already know how to tackle it. So, and that actually is probably quite a relief for a lot of people who think this is purely coming from COVID and nobody knows what to do with it.
Well, what I would say is we don't know how to cure it yet.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we don't know how to cope with it.
Right.
So that's and that's really the gist of what the book is about, and what and the psychotherapy approaches to helping people to manage those sorts of things.
I mean, I have like fibromyalgia, which is non-curable, as many people will come up. I've got a cure for it, but it's just there's too many things to tick off the box there, and it's one has to learn to manage it.
Yep.
And there are many things that maybe the fog brain, maybe other things that you have to deal with, and it's like you've got the initial shock. I've got this. What is it? Scary, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, okay, all right, it's here. I don't know if it's curable. How do I manage it? How do I live with it? How do I still be productive? And if you decide to team up with whatever you've got, a team up with that symptom, a team up with that issue, and you find an agreement. I know I can't push you too far in this area because there'll be some lashback.
Right.
I know that I can extend over this way. And it's really kind of becoming more in tuned with oneself and your limitations and where you really can express.
So I like that concept of team up, because like we were talking about before, that idea of acceptance can be a really hard sell, because most people, you hear that word acceptance, they think, oh, it's going to be this way forever.
Yeah.
I just have to tolerate it and suck it up, and so on and so forth. But teaming up that's a nice kind of reframe of the concept of acceptance. That if it's okay with you, I'm totally going to steal.
Please go ahead.
Because I think that it's a different way of framing that idea of, rather than fighting against or struggling against and trying to push this thing out of your life that you don't have any control of right now, it's about sort of saying, okay, like, you're here, right? So let's find a way to make the best of it, and let's learn. Let's be curious about each other, find out about each other, figure each other out, and let's find a way that we can, have some way to work together to move forward.
Right, and you learn a lot about yourself. You learn when you can push those boundaries, and you learn those signs of no. That's where the no comes in. I can't do this. I don't need to apologize for it. I don't even need to explain it. I can't. I won't. Because I know it's going to cost me. And it's okay to say that. This is your body, you know your limitations. And when you do team up, when you are in partnership with whatever you've got, you are actually more in power, with it, because it's no longer got the hold on you. You are like you would be in business or in a relationship, right? I'm in a relationship with my fibro, and we have to navigate and negotiate, right? So we can do that. I mean, there's so many people I know with mental stress or bipolar or depression. I mean, depression is one of the things you get with fibro. And it's like, I think one of the things we must certainly put behind anything is no shame, no blame. Don't be ashamed. Don't put any blame on something, because you don't choose to be depressed. You don't choose to be anxious. You are responding to something that's happening to you, and you may not have all the tools in order to do so. And this is where we need to be kinder and more compassionate to people instead of snap out of it. That's the worst thing you can say.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah,
not my favorite.
No, this is how I want to snap out of it. Yeah. Frustration. I mean, that's another thing, right? People get so frustrated with the way they're feeling and frustrated with everything that's going on, and that can build anxieties. How do we calm our frustration down? Because we feel powerless. I can't do anything. I'm frustrated. It's okay. Take a breath. Take a breath. Decompose. I haven't got the word. Thank you. Decompress. Yeah. And there's always something you can do, and sometimes simply doing nothing is doing something.
Absolutely. Yeah, like we talked about before. It's okay to take a nap.
Yeah.
It's okay to do nothing.
Yeah.
As long as you're As long as you're strategic about it, you're not engaging in avoidance, and whatever decision you're making is moving you towards what's meaningful and important to you, and it serves that purpose, then it's all the justification that you need.
So what else do you do with your patients? What other things are you actually offering alongside of the book?
The proverbial shoulder to cry on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's tremendous value in the therapeutic relationship, and just being beyond just being listened to, but
Yeah.
being connected
Yeah.
to someone, and knowing that they're in your corner and they've got your back. I challenge my patients a lot. I push buttons. I try to get them out of their comfort zone, because usually if they're in their comfort zone, they're avoiding something. So I want to find out, what's that thing you're avoiding? Why are you avoiding it? And what is that keeping you from that's meaningful and important to you? So I try to keep people anchored in values-based behavior. I try to help them to be in that observant state, right? So it's one thing to have an emotion and have that emotion sort of, or a thought kind of define your momentary reality. It's another thing to be able to say, I feel really sad right now.
Yeah.
Or I notice that I'm feeling really sad right now, as opposed to being like, I am sad.
Yes.
Right. Or I notice that I'm feeling really anxious, as opposed to I'm anxious, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's like I'm anxious, then that's a definition of who you are. But if you just say I'm feeling anxious, well, that's just something that you're feeling. So helping people to stay grounded in those kinds of principles, and then there's a lot of relationship management, because people, whether it's problems with people that they work with, or problems with family members. People are having a lot of difficulty with a lot of different things. They always have. It's just, everything is just kind of exacerbated right now. So whatever was bothering people a little bit before is just bothering them a whole lot more now, because for all of us, our reserves feel pretty depleted.
Yeah. Emotions are here for a reason. You're in that emotion because whatever your environment is has ignited that emotion. But it is, I always say, spend the emotion, acknowledge the emotion, go through it, but don't become emotional about the emotion, because that's when you get stuck in emotion, and then you've kind of forgotten, well, why did I get in that in the first place? I'm just angry. You get stuck there. So it's always the process of going through, isn't it?
Yep. So I call that meta emotion. So people are having feelings about their feelings. So it's like, I feel sad, and I'm angry that I feel sad, or I feel anxious, or I'm guilty that I feel anxious. And I'm like, no. Just let me just feel what you're feeling. Like, you have to feel it, just allow yourself to experience the root emotion. There's no real point in piling on.
Right.
So, the same principle. I refer to that as meta emotion, because it's emotion on top of emotion. And then, the other thing, like my constant advice and encouragement for people to do the basic things of self-care: get enough sleep, eat nutritious food, exercise on a regular basis to whatever degree you can. Not everybody has to be a triathlete, but those very, very basic things about self-care, people tragically underestimate the impact and the effect that taking care of those three things can have on their overall physical health, mental health, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being. It's really, really significant. So it's a pretty foundational piece of what I try to help people to incorporate into their lives.
I always say that, sometimes you cannot avoid things. You just have to allow. You just have to allow yourself to take the journey, to go through the process. No dictating, no demanding, no directorship. Just allow. Just go through it. Allow it. That's where the spirituality is, in trust. Just allow. And the more you allow, the more you're guided, and the more you'll get through it. And I think very often we want to dictate how we do things, so dictate what the outcome is. And I want my destination to be this. And it's not even your destination to go to. If you just allow, you will actually end up somewhere else where you're meant to be. But that willing to take the journey.
Yeah. So all those things, dictating, demanding, they're all part of what I refer to as, or what ACT refers to as, the control agenda.
Yeah.
And most of the time you're like, we're constantly trying to sniff that out and move it along. Because the more you try to control things that are ultimately uncontrollable in your life, the more your life is going to be held back by it.
And before we get to your website, the patterns, how many people are reliving a program or pattern that the way they were brought up, or even, kind of the DNA of ancestors, that pattern is in them. And it's like, it's recognizing that pattern and that it's no longer yours. You can delete that pattern. You can create a different canvas for yourself. Just because, well, my parents did that and my grandparents did that, doesn't mean you have to.
There's a concept in ACT called self as context, which is really just about, be here now, not there then, right? So make the decisions in your life based on who you are now and where you are now, not based on who you were, where you were when you were 8 or 10 or 12 or 16 years old. And it's just another version of being present, as opposed to being stuck in the past or cogitating about the future.
Now, you wrote this book with someone else?
I did. So my co-author, her name is Julie Luongo. So the format of the book is that I kind of go through and explain the principles and kind of the behavioral science behind acceptance and commitment therapy. Julie actually had COVID and she had long haul symptoms. She edited another book of mine on Lyme disease. So she was really familiar with a lot of the ACT approaches. So when she was dealing with her long haul COVID symptoms, she was implementing the ACT approach. So her voice is also in the book. So at the end of every section, I'm kind of explaining how all this stuff works. She gives the examples about how, this is how this worked in my life. This is how how I use this principle to help me get to a better place. So the book it's written really for everybody. It's not, it's not a textbook by any stretch. And Julie's voice, I think, is a very powerful one. She's also very funny. So her parts are fun.
Well, the reason why I do these podcasts is that relatability, somebody who listens to a show and goes, I can relate to that. Or, I didn't know that. Or, this is something I can try, or this is a different thought I can have. And it's that when it's, coming from somebody who's been through it, or somebody who's in it, then you want to hear it. You want to listen to it. And it's always that relatability where I feel like that too. Right. And so, and it makes us feel like, A, we're not alone, and B, there are some answers, and C, I've just got to step up and apply them.
Yep.
Right.
One of the things I really love about this approach is that it requires absolutely no talent. So it's skills based. It's the kind of thing that as long as you practice it and as long as you work it, you will get better at it if you commit yourself to it. So there's no this will work for me, it won't work for you, or whatever. It's like it's just you just keep working it.
Right. And again, it goes back to all of the information may not apply. If one piece of the information applies and that one piece shifts you in a different direction, hallelujah.
Yep, exactly.
Right. And then you can come back to the book and you probably find something else applies, right? It's
I say in the book, I don't expect that everything in here is going to be helpful to you. But if you find one or two things that are, then I'm happy.
Right. So how do people get the book? I know it's on Amazon, and how do people get hold of you?
So the book, this is what it looks like. That's the copy. Probably the fastest and easiest place to get it is on Amazon. And if you do get it and you read it, please post a review. It's also on other online booksellers. It is in bookstores, if bookstores exist anywhere anymore. And you can also get it on the website of the publisher, which is Changemakers Books. But the major online retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, that's probably the fastest and easiest place to get it. People can find me in a couple of different places. So the website for my private practice is providencepsychology.com. So Providence is in the city Providence in Rhode Island, which is where I'm located. So it's providencepsychology.com. And then I'm a professor and the chair of the Department of Psychology and the deputy director of the Center for Health and Behavioral Sciences at Bryant University. So, my academic self can be found at bryant.edu.
Excellent. Wonderful. And, thank you. Thank you for writing the book. I mean, there is so much confusion out there. There's so many people that I either have had it or are scared of it, or just the entire emotional roller coaster that going in around it. And we just need someone who comes at it with some gentle common sense, and that's, we don't want highfalutin. We don't think we want some, oh yeah, I can do that.
So I hope the book is full of gentle common sense. I'm not a highfalutin kind of guy, despite the letters after my name. You might have a fantastic thing, but if people can't understand it, it's not going to do anything.
Exactly. You want everyone to again relate to it and feel that I think a lot of the time we don't want to make people feel that you're dumbing them down because it's unrelatable. So and having Julia really share her experiences and how it's all helped her as well, that is firsthand testimony. So it worked for her. If I apply it, let's see what it can do for me. And the added thing, results may vary, right? Because the results may be different for you, right? And that's the thing, don't compare. This is what happened to you. Something else may happen to you that even more extraordinary, right? So it's the willingness, I think. I have another genre called Your Health is Your Choice, and really it is. You talked about the exercise and, the mental rest and good nutrition and good people around you, right? All of that is so very important in your life. And that is our choice. That is our choice, folks. And so you've written a book that just helps people through this. And so it's their choice to pick it up and to read it, to pass it on. But I still do recommend book club or family.
Absolutely.
Especially if anybody in the family has gone through COVID or is worried about COVID, is just overstressed with everything. And there's so many people like that. Read it together, and then everybody can then discuss a part that really speaks out to them. You're opening the door. You're giving them permission to open the door and express their feelings that you may not have known otherwise.
Exactly.
Right? So don't be afraid to share, folks. No judgment, right? Thank you so much for sharing here today, Joseph.
I really appreciate the time and the discussion, Sarah. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And remember, folks, it is up to you. This book is here to help you. It's your choice to pick it up. It's your choice to listen, to learn it, and don't forget to pass it on. There's always an answer if you're willing to accept it. Bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. You will hear many, many shows here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. We have new shows for you out every week. Just find them on our podcast or What's New. If you feel that you have something to share that makes a difference in the lives of others, or you too feel that you could be a host, please contact me at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com and we will be glad to speak with you. Have a wonderful day.